What's your view on vagueness?
Well, I used to be a supervaluationist, so I used to think that for a vague statement to be true was for it to be true under any way of making it precise. Um, but I've now given up that view, and I hold a much more radical view. Um, there are different ways of getting into the view, but one way is that I reject the idea that there's an understanding of borderline case that's relevant to vagueness. So if you want to put it perhaps in a somewhat exaggerated way, I no longer believe in borderline cases, so I do believe in vagueness. Well, you might ask, well, how can there be vagueness without borderline cases? And my view is this: if you take a predicate like bald, it can be indeterminate or vague in its application to a range of cases. That's a perfectly sensible notion. But we can't sensibly talk about it being vague or indeterminate in its application to a single case. So an analogy may help. If I have some stepping stones, I can talk about them being uneven. It makes perfectly good sense to go like this. But I can't talk about a single stepping stone being uneven. That makes no sense. So I now hold a similar view about vagueness. There's a meaningful notion of global indeterminacy, but no meaningful notion of local indeterminacy. And this view has many, many consequences. So that's the basic idea behind it.
What is the major philosophical inheritance that the ancient Greeks have left to us?
Well, so many particular contributions, but the main one is just how to do philosophy. They provided a model of philosophical reasoning.
Part of your work is about the relation between essence and modality. Could you talk a little bit about this relation?
Yes. So many people used to think, maybe still do, that for something to be essentially have a certain property. For Socrates to be essentially a man, it's simply a matter of it being necessarily the case that Socrates is a man, or that Socrates is a man if he exists. I think that's not the correct explanation. But there is indeed no explanation of central, what it is for something to have a central property in terms of the necessity. I have been tempted by the thought that there might be an account of necessity in terms of essence, so that something is going to be necessarily the case if it is the case in virtue of the nature of some items, any items whatever. So if you're indiscriminate, so to speak, about the source of the essence, then you get a necessity. So that, in a nutshell, I think is a view I find very tempting. Now, I don't know whether I want to call it a reductive view. Probably want to be a little more cautious to say that there is this connection between the two notions. But I think there's sort of problems in thinking genuinely reductive.
Is there any philosophical matter on which you changed your mind recently?
Well, yes, the vagueness is one of them.
Is there another one?
Is there another one? Well, yes, I think I don't know if this is exactly a change of mind, but I have views now about response dependence, which I certainly would probably not have wanted to own previously. So let me just give an example of what I have in mind. Suppose I try to explain the concept of being cool in the following way, that for something to be cool is for it to be judged to be cool. Now you might think that this doesn't properly define the concept at all, because it's circular. If you explain what it is to be cool, in terms of coolness itself, namely what it is to be judged to be cool, but you might think, well, I still don't know what it is now to judge something to be cool. But my view now is that this is a perfectly legitimate way of defining the concept cool, and recognizing there are definitions of this sort has enormous repercussions. Another way is that I now believe that there is an intelligible notion of unrestricted, absolutely unrestricted quantification. So many people thought you could just quantify absolutely everything. My own view now is that one can't. Whatever it is that one might attempt to quantify over, there is also always something more that you could quantify over. So again, I think that's a view that my former self would previously have disowned. There's a general change in my views. I could say very roughly that I've become a bit more Kantian.
Change your views like that? Is it always because of some readings or some workshops that you want to have some discussion with somebody, or your own reflections on your views and your satisfaction?
It's always a bit of both. In the case of vagueness, for example, I actually was never happy with the supervaluational view, but I never knew what to replace it with. And I don't know exactly how it happened that I came to this global conception, but it was just often it's just for me it's not really anything very precise. It's just an inkling that one could perhaps fruitfully move in a certain direction, and then I explore it. Now, I fairly recently did some work on a topic called semantic relationism. That's the view that there are relationships of meaning between expressions which don't simply follow from the meanings of the individual expressions. And in that case, that was the result of many discussions that I've heard about direct reference theory, which I find very appealing, which emphasized the difficulties of the view. So that was a case of my having encountered similar difficulties with variables in some work I've done, and thinking they might really have some relationship to the difficulties these people are talking about. So there was sort of partly a product of my own reflection, partly a product of hearing about the difficulties other people are having, that led me to the view. So it would be very hard for me to sort of isolate any particular thing that led to the change.
About this global view on vagueness you talked about before, I wanted to know if you could express out a quick way the semantics of this view, how does it work exactly?
Well,
the general idea that,
yeah. So, well, there is actually a logic and a semantics, but let me just. I mean, it would need to be properly motivated. So let me say something about the underlying logical ideas. So, if there is no notion